Hey people, Amora here, and you're listening to His Health, a podcast dedicated to all things love, health, and wellness for Black gay men. As you know, our show allows healthcare providers to share their strengths, their weaknesses, really everything that they've learned in their journey to provide uplifting healthcare to LGBT communities of color, especially Black gay men. On this episode, my guest is the one and only Dr. Theo Hodge Jr. Dr. Hodge is a well-known infectious disease specialist and practitioner based in our very own Washington, D.C. He received his medical degree from the University of Virginia School of Medicine and has been practicing for 28 years. Today, Dr. Hodge will take us back to the beginning, providing an intimate understanding of D.C.'s HIV epidemic in the 80s and 90s. He'll also talk about how a personal relationship with a loved one drew him into the field, and also what has changed and what stayed the same in the HIV landscape over the last 3 decades. Fun fact, you know I love these. Dr. Hodge served in the U.S. military during Desert Storm. We salute him for his service. Another fun fact that you should know is Dr. Hodge leads a His Health CME CNU series all about PreP. Check it out at hishealth.org on the Continue Education navigation tile. All right, let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Hodge.
Thank you.
So we like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker. I want you to fill in the blank here. Baby Theo was
a bookworm. That was my nickname. Brother Book.
Brother Book.
Brother Book. That was Baby Theo.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
stuck for a long time too. I was like, okay, y'all can let that go.
And as a child, you wanted to be a blank when you grew up.
I always wanted to be an OBGYN.
Second doctor who said that they wanted to be a doctor. Yeah. You always knew that you wanted to be in the medical field.
I knew I wanted to be in the medical field, but I was very specific. I was going to be an OBGYN. My mom was a nurse. She is. She will always be a nurse. Mm-hmm. And she was in OBGYN, and I would hear all these stories of delivery and, all this. I mean, her stories were wild, really wild. And I was like, I have to do this. When I got to that point where I had to make a decision, things morphed to where I am now. Mm-hmm. I have no regrets. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Where did you grow up?
I was right out there in Prince George's County.
So you're from the area?
I'm from the area, yep. I was born right there at the Washington Hospital Center.
Oh, man.
And my parents were part of the flight to the suburbs because, they were the middle-class African-Americans, and they could not be seen in the city. Mm-hmm. So they went out to the suburbs.
Go to exit 17A, Landover, Woodmore, Fox Lake.
Exactly. And I grew up in a very middle-class African-American neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, when I look back on it, I was very blessed. And, most people in the neighborhood had a mother and a father, and people were interested in their kids, and they would show up at PTA meetings, and they were like, you will do this. And it really was a neighborhood. So, Mrs. Hamilton, you had better mind her, because if she said anything to your mama,
it's over.
That's it. You just be laid out across the floor. So
peel them off the driveway.
It was that when they talk about it takes a village, it was definitely a village, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts. We knew everybody in the neighborhood knew each other. Mm-hmm. I was, grew up to become the new Washington Post paper boy, so I knew everybody.
Wow, you had like an idyllic childhood, paperboy.
I knew who didn't pay their bills.
Last time I'll throw this paper at you.
Exactly. No, I need my money.
So I want to take it back a little bit with you for our audience to picture the late 1980s. At the time, the federal government began slowly allocating funds into AIDS research and passed legislation to use funds for AIDS prevention and education and testing. Ryan White, an Indiana teenager who contracted HIV through contaminated blood products used to treat hemophilia, began to speak publicly about AIDS stigma and discrimination. And at the same time, a young Dr. Theo Hodge began practicing medicine. And I want to say that you are still young. You're fresh. Fresh and so clean.
I love you forever too, Amor.
Tell us what led you or inspired you to begin working in the field of HIV.
So it is a very, very specific event. One of my best friends, I ran track here, was at Eleanor Roosevelt in high school up in Greenbelt, Maryland. So I was a track runner and actually went to college on a track scholarship. So one of my buddies who I ran track with at Eleanor Roosevelt came out to me. So it was actually it was actually during my first year of medical school. He came out to me, and it was, was a big deal because none of my friends had ever come out to me. So he said, I have to talk to you. And, so he was essentially my coming out buddy. So by the time I, got into my residency, flash forward a few years, he came to me and he said, well, I have HIV. Well, this was like 1989, 1990.
Right, that cusp.
Right, and we really didn't have any effective therapy. People were using sequential therapy. So he said, well, yeah, I'm on this drug, AZT, and AZT, particularly for African Americans, was very stigmatized, and it was a very toxic drug. We didn't have anything else, and people were dying right and left. We both belonged to a African American Baptist church here in town, which was famous for getting up and saying, well, another 25-year-old died of cancer. And I was like, yeah, right, because they couldn't say HIV or AIDS. So he became ill. It was my very first person that became ill. In fact, I will tell you, let me dial it back a bit. What happened was we both went to Whitman Walker. He said, I'm going to get tested. And I said, well, I'm going to go volunteer because I am, I was actually in my first year of residency, and I wanted to get a feel of what it was to be in the LGBT community and if this was something I was going to do. So he got tested. I started volunteering. He tested positive. So again, it was only sequential therapy at the time, and he started to get ill over the next 3 years. And watching people's reactions to him, because we would go out to the clubs, and he was a beautiful child, beautiful. But as he became ill, he started to lose weight, and the whole physical appearance stigmatizing him. And to watch people's reaction to him was just heartbreaking, to include his family. So as he became ill, I was finishing my residency, and I had medical school paid for by a military scholarship. So Uncle Sam said, you need to put on that green polyester and you need to go and pay me back. So Uncle Sam sent me over to Europe and actually went into Desert Storm. That was 1990. So here I am out in the desert going, I wonder if I can pay that money back.
I wonder if I have enough.
It was too late. So I come out of Desert Storm and I get a letter saying, Theo, I'm really sick. Can you come home? I'll never forget. I flew home, went up to Georgetown University, and there he was in the hospital, and we were really good friends. And as I walked in, he couldn't even lift his head to say hello. And I was like, oh my God, he is really sick. Because usually we see each other, it's like,
right.
Nothing like that. And he died within 2 weeks. I had to go back to Europe, so my mother actually represented me at his funeral. And it was then that I said, this is outrageous. I mean, it was just outrageous how people treated him. And that had a profound effect on me deciding to do an infectious disease fellowship. Because while I was in the doing my payback, I had to do general medicine. But after I finished that, I said, okay, I'm going to do an infectious disease fellowship. I'm going to go into HIV medicine because during the time he was sick, there were no people of color that were doing HIV medicine. They were all Caucasian gay men that were doing it. And he was, we were from a very solid African American upbringing, but, we had some reservations about the Caucasian gay men because unlike other places, DC, the LGBT community, particularly then, I think it's better now, but particularly then, it was very segregated. So, black gay men hung out with black gay men, and of course they're mixed a little, but it was very segregated. So people actually seeing a Caucasian doc was a big deal then. Not as much now, but then it was. So, and that was his problem. He was like, who do I go to?
Who do I see?
Right. And they'll never forget saying, well, maybe I can at least represent that. And I had that opportunity because by the time I came into practice, the year was 1996, and that was the year of HAART, or highly active antiretroviral therapy. That was the year I could actually offer patients something. Before, I could just say to them, I will hold your hand, and make you feel comfortable as you go from this place to the next.
Make some preparations.
Exactly.
Make some plans.
Exactly. But in 1996, when I started my practice, I actually could say, okay, I have maybe 35 pills, but at least I have something that can stop this virus and offer you an opportunity to live life. Mm-hmm. And that is the year that HIV went from being a death sentence to a chronic medical condition. Mm-hmm. So that is when I went into practice. And it was wild, I have to tell you, because when I first came into practice, I had the assistance of the leaders of the Black gay community. So, I had Rainy Cheeks. I had another gentleman by the name of I forgot Rick's last name, but he published a book known as The Mailbox, M-A-L-E box. And, it has some very provocative articles and all that. Mm-hmm. But he took a picture of me and put it right on the back and said, Black gay doctor, go see him. Back then.
But I'm saying, though.
Right. Back then my hair was black and I was, at least 25 pounds lighter. And somebody might have thought I was cute. So,
you
fine? Like, who is this?
Y'all fancy. Dr. Hodge is extra fine.
So they were, it was wild. And of course, I was younger then. I was in barbershops. I was like, hey, y'all, it's about HIV 101. And people would look at me like, y'all. Ooh. But the thing is, because I was so passionate about it, and my whole big thing about speaking is to actually break it down so that you can understand. That's how
make it accessible.
Exactly. So for me, that is my motivation, and the biggest compliment you could ever give me is to say, "Hey, I actually understood what you were talking about," rather than I fell asleep. I was looking at my smartphone. Child, what are you talking about? So, and of course, I really do take the cues from other people. So if I saw that one method didn't work, I went for another one. So that's what I was doing. I didn't even think about getting paid to do it. I mean, that was, again, it was me, Mother Teresa, and the masses. So it was wild. I'm telling you, Immoral, because I had people, remember, I was a news kid on the block.
Right.
I had people with one foot in the grave and hanging on by a toenail, and they were coming to see me because I look like them. They're like, well, maybe you have my back. And I'm like, yeah, I got your back. Because I know what you've been through. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And for so many people, I was able to help them. There certainly was a significant amount that it was just too late. They had already, the disease had gone too far, and they just were too sick to actually think about being adherent to those very toxic and difficult regimens. Because, single pill once a day, these children today, they look at me and they're like, you know what, Dr. Hodge? I know you're going to put me on the pill. What color is the pill? And, I'm like, well, it's okay. Who cares? Well, and you've heard me say this, why are we talking about the color of a pill? But I really did have somebody tell me. They were like, well, my wardrobe, I only have neutrals. And so,
oh, wow.
Right. And so the color of the pill has to, go along with my aesthetic. And I'm like, okay, whatever works. We can talk about the color of the pill if you want to do that. Back then, we weren't talking about the color of the pill. We were like, okay, you're going to take these 35 pills all through the day with all these toxic things.
Serious regimen.
And back then, remember, people were dying. So people were looking at me going, sure, I don't care. I'm going to have numbness and tingling.
I have nothing to lose.
I will take numbness and tingling over laying over there in a casket looking pretty any day. So people were doing that. Of course, now you wouldn't dream of that, which is a testament to the advancements that we've had in treatment. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, hallelujah, that's a wonderful thing because, holding a mama, especially a black mama who had the triple whammy, because it's always what you got. It was always a triple whammy. Mama just found out their child was gay. Child had HIV. Child was going to be dead.
Right. All at once.
All at once. And mom was in shock. I mean, I can't tell you how many some people were so shocked that they couldn't say a word. Couldn't get mad. They were just numb. They were finding, because mamas love their children, especially their sons. They're like, what do you mean he's going to die? My 25-year-old son is going to die. So that is what I had to deal with. And of course, I was in the hospital all the time. All the time. I was at funerals. It was not cute. Because remember, although I was able to save a lot of people, there was still a significant amount of people that it was too late. Yeah. Or they couldn't take these regimens because they were
just
difficult and toxic.
So much to swallow every day. So toxic.
Exactly. So my whole big thing, and it has always been, is all about uplifting people. So particularly my black gay men, because we've had all kinds of trauma. Especially sitting up in church. I can remember now. There's the choir director, just gay as can be. Over half the choir, just gay. Piano player, big name, Grammy winner. And then pastor gets up there and say, hey! Remember, all these people up in church giving all their money. Pastor says, hey, all you gay people, y'all gonna bust hell wide open. And people are saying, amen. I'm like, up. Wait a minute, hold up. Did that man actually say that? Did I put some money in that offering? Really? Snatch it right back.
Well, you're talking about so many things. Well, gosh,
I'm sorry.
Came out the gate, which is awesome. But I want to talk a little bit about that spirituality piece and really about community and representation. So, you're talking a lot about what it is to be Black gay male, what it is to identify with the spiritual home that maybe, for all intents and purposes, is not accepting, but you still stay. What are your thoughts around that?
Okay, let me give you a little background about Dr. Hodge. Dr. Hodge's mama is the Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Hodge. Mm-hmm. And I am her only son and her eldest child. Me telling her...
a double whammy.
Me telling her that I was gay did not go well. Girl jumped up out of her bed, jumped in her car. Before she jumped in the car, hands on the hips. I will never accept.
Can I ask you how you brought it up? Like what?
I didn't bring it up.
I was gonna say, did
Girl,
you bring it up?
Me. I was sitting there rubbing her back, doing saying, that's what we do. We gotta do
what we do. Party time.
I was like, well, I need my back rub. And, she had just cooked me this fabulous meal. And it was my second year medical school. And I'm like, okay. So as I'm rubbing her back, she said, well, I was just talking to your Auntie Mary. I was like, uh-oh. As I knew what was coming.
So you felt it?
Mm-hmm. I knew. I already knew.
Was it the first time she tried to ask you?
It was the first time.
Okay.
And she said, she said something to me, and I said, no, that can't possibly be true. So I'm going to ask you. I said, okay, now if you ask me, do you want me to really answer you? And she said, of course, son, you are my son, all the stuff that you are my beloved son, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is the minister talking. So she said, well, are you gay? And I said, I am. What?
You did not hesitate.
I didn't hesitate, because this is one thing in my family. My parents really instilled in us to be who you are. They really did. They were like, you need to have confidence in who you are, because this is a rough world. If you don't have confidence in it, don't think anybody else is going to have this. So you need to have this. We are going to do our best to instill this in you. So I was in medical school by this time, so I was like, So I'm going to see what girl going to say after I say this. Girl jumped out of bed, threw her clothes on, and put her hands on her hips, said she will never accept this, and drove away to the middle of the night. So,
what?
Right, because it was 10 o'clock at night when I told her this. And, of course, my father comes upstairs and says, what happened? I said, well, we had a tiff. And I just left it at that.
You didn't tell her?
Because
she's going to tell him.
Right, so. Well, I knew she was going to tell him, and I didn't. It was, although I'm sitting here very calm about it, it was pretty dramatic to have your mother jump up, put her hands on her hips, and say, I will never accept this, and drive away to the middle of the night. I'm like, girl, gonna give all that drama? She giving mama's fame for drama, so she definitely served it up that night.
I can tell you, when I told my mom actually found out from my uncle who was staying with us, and he had seen me walk some little girl I was dating at the time to her car and kiss her, and I turn around and he's in the window and his face just squeezes away, and I'm like, and my mom is a physician's assistant, and she was working, from Maryland too, she was working paying back some scholarship from Howard in New Jersey, and that weekend she's like, I'm just gonna come up for the weekend. I was like, and my mom is a Nigerian mom. If you know Nigerian moms, they are strong, they are stoic, and she waited. Friday she was there, Saturday there, she was there Sunday. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get away with her not bringing it up. Sunday morning she's like, Amra, come to my room. I want to ask you a question. And I'm like, And so it just blubbered out. And at the time I was like, I still identify as sort of just queer, bi, whatever. And you don't come out to your mom and try to explain I don't know, queer, amorous. She's like, what the hell? You gay or you're not? And she's like crying at the time, but silent Nigerian thug tears. And she just holds my face and she's like, I know you are not gay because I birthed you. And I was just like, okay. Like you just felt it when I came out, but I was straight. So dramatics all around. But I think that's just how parents kind of deal. But
you win.
Let's talk a little bit about your practice. You maintain a private practice today.
I do.
But you definitely did not start in private practice.
I did. I started in private practice. I had zero. So here's my story. So when I first came into practice, I had zero patients, zero. But there was a company in town that bought up practices then, and they said, "Oh, you African American man, gay man, you may actually make us money." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever," because they were paying me the salary. Now remember, I'm coming out of residency where you were getting, some
peanuts,
pennies,
yeah,
and they're, throwing these numbers. I'll never forget. They took me to lunch. You had to actually wear a jacket to get into the restaurant. I had never been to a restaurant where you had to wear a jacket. And I was like, oh.
Not optional, required.
These people, right. I was like, these people must be serious. So I already had a job offer to go to Florida. And I was going to Disney World. And it was, they had wined and dined me. I was, practicing the Disney wave on jet skis.
You were halfway there. It
was fabulous. I was like, I need to be here with you people. And they said, well, no, you need to be here. And I said, these people are paying me this. And they said, well, you should be making that. And I'm like, you are so right. So
I'll just visit.
Right, exactly. So that's how I ended up here with DC. But remember, I also, you got common sense. You're like, okay, I have no patience and you're going to be paying me all this money. I need to generate a practice so that I can have patients. So that's when I was doing the barbershops and I was doing schools and I was doing anywhere I could do HIV 101. Us helping us, it was a wonderful story because one of my patients.
It's a great organization. And tell the viewers a little bit about what Us Helping Us, the organization is in DC.
Is a African American founded organization by African American gay men who at the time wanted an alternative way to approach HIV. Because this organization was founded prior to the event of effective antiretroviral therapy. So their thinking at the time was that all Western medicine was bad. So one of my patients who had been with me in my fellowship was a member of Us Helping Us. And he went to Ron Simmons and said, there's a new African American gay man out there. He is trying to uplift the community. You need to let him come here and do HIV 101 because he's out there doing HIV 101. And Ron Simmons said, no, we will not have him here. We will not have Western medicine, blah, blah. So my patient was like, you need to get over it because, these are things that people need to know about. There are options. No one is saying that they have to take this, but it is all about options. There are many ways that one can go to wellness. So Ron said, okay, maybe. I need to meet him first. So I will never forget. I had to walk up these ridiculously long stairs up to his office. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, what is going to happen? This is when they were over on 8th Street before the big fabulosity that they are in now. So I get up to the top of the stairs and knock on the door. And Ron Simmons is like, you may enter. I'm like, who says that? You may enter. So I walk in and I will never forget the look on his face. He was like, because again, remember back then I was thin and my hair was black and he did not expect.
He was like, oh, you're fine.
Right. Well, he was like, you're not old. I was like, no, I'm not old. So, he asked me, his mouth was open the entire time. It was hilarious. Right. Whoa. And then he said, you know what? Because I was scheduled to do HIV 101 that night. He said, I'm going to listen to you do this. Because he had no intention to do it. So I went downstairs, did my HIV 101. It was a packed house. They kept me for an hour asking me questions. And that is really how my practice began. Because there were so many people in that audience that ended up coming to see me.
What are some of the differences then? Because I know you sort of, in terms of your day-to-day clinical practice is private practice, but you do a lot of education in public spheres and have done. What is sort of the difference in terms of engagement with Black folks in those different care settings or education settings?
It can be very different. So, for instance, if I'm talking to the folks over at Us Helping Us, which I many times, and the other aid service organizations, Mandate, all of the organizations that cater to uplifting the African American gay man, I love talking to them because, we have so many touchstones in terms of spirituality, people growing up in the church, the stigma that you've had to face if you were in the church, your family, just being black, period, let alone being black and gay. I mean, my father would tell me this. He would say to me, look, son, we love you. We will always love you. And my biggest disappointment for myself is I can certainly have a touchstone with you when it comes to being black. And I can offer you all of my experiences. And I want to do this to try to help you get through life without some of the pains that I've experienced. But I have no touchstone with being gay.
I can't relate.
I can't relate. So I can't help you there. That is something that you're going to have to walk that path by yourself. So with people who are also walking that path, it's nice to touch and interact because I can actually discuss some of the things and recognizing that everybody has a different path. I'm coming from, this perspective over here. I grew up middle class, right? Yeah. Exactly. So I will tell you what my experience was, and sometimes you can relate. Many times you can relate because, as I remind people all the time, it doesn't matter that I have an MD. I am still black, and I can tell you, because people love to say, "Oh, well, you think you this and you think you that," and I always have to remind them. You know what? Do you really think I had to wait for you to remind me that I was black? Let me see. Who else reminded me that I was black? The rest of the world. So, I mean, really, people kill me when they do this stuff.
I wake up with this on first, not my letters behind my name.
And unless I was, absolutely did have a mental health problem, trust me, I know I'm black and that people remind me of that every single day. So despite the fact that I come from this middle class upbringing, there are many, and I'm not about to tell you that they're all the same, but there are many touchstones that I have across the board because I'm black and I experienced people's reactions to that. And all you have to do is look, let's say, the White House. I wonder who we might see there, where you look and you say, he is president of the United States. And I have, we see how people have reacted to him.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't care what people say. A lot of that has to do simply because he's black.
I think they're still looking for his birth certificate.
Right, exactly.
And I want to jump back to what you talked about with that organization in D.C., Us Helping Us, and when you first started collaborating, their aversion to Western medicine, and talk a little bit about the roots of medical mistrust amongst black people, but specifically black gay men as well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, one of the biggest things that people look back is Tuskegee. And Tuskegee was this clinical trial where black men who had syphilis had the treatment with syphilis withheld deliberately when there was a treatment to cure them of their infection. The idea of the clinical trial was to watch the natural history of syphilis, which is horrendous. Horrendous. The end result of syphilis can be psychosis, blindness, stroke. All of those things were allowed to happen to black men. There were no Caucasian men in this. It was an egregious and heinous event that changed the clinical practice of medicine forever, because there were those who said this is bad and we need to have guidelines so this never ever happens again. But when you're talking about a community, they remember that.
Right.
And I can tell you what's really funny in retrospect is that I will have, these 25 years olds and I'm talking about a clinical trial. And they're like, well, you know about Tuskegee.
They
like,
all,
right,
you can be 16 and you your parents tell you about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And of course, I'm asking them, well, tell me, what do you really know about Tuskegee? Well, you know, my auntie said, what did your auntie say? Well, she said something.
But I know it's bad.
Right, I know it's
That's
bad.
why I don't like the doctor.
Right. Exactly.
I come to you because you're black.
Exactly. So there's some very real reasons that people have distrust of, you know, the medical field. And I've seen some of my colleagues in the way they react to their African American, you know, patients. They're looking at their African American females, and, you know, in fact, I will never forget, I had to correct the man. I was like, what? Because the woman was coming in, she was coming in with her child, and her husband happened to be military, and he was overseas. So he said, a welfare mama coming in here. And I was like, wait a minute, why? Do you know her? Do you take a history? Why are you looking at her? Because she is carrying a child and she's by herself, and calling her welfare mama. But here, that's an issue. Because if you have that attitude, how do you think they're going to be treating that patient?
Right.
They're not going to get the same opportunities. They may not hear all of the options they have to address their medical problems. And if you feel that as the patient, are you really going to tell everything that's going on with you?
And are you going to come back?
And are you ever going to come back?
Yeah.
So that was a big deal for me in terms of my patients. I really wanted to make sure they were comfortable in my office. And, you know, as I tell people all the time, this starts with my front desk people. So, you know, I had to whip them. I can't tell you how many people I had to walk to the door. You got to go.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I would tell people all the time, here you are, you're a young gay man, you're coming in, you're horrified already. You're walking in, and you look up at the front desk, and the person looks back at you and says, what you up here for? Don't I know your mama? I mean, can you imagine? Would you look at the time? I think I left something in the car. Poof. And they're gone. So that for me, and not to tell you, it was a process. Because here I am coming out of my fellowship, and I'm thinking, I have to go touch the world, blah, blah, blah. I'm not thinking about all the components that go into that. Just to get to me, people have to get through my front desk. And as I started to realize this, because I actually had people, I'm sitting at the gym, and I'm like, dude, you know, we love you, we can't stand your staff, and they run. And I'm like, and I'm in the grocery store, right. I'm walking through the grocery store, people say, hey, child, we hate your nurse, we love you. And then we, you know, I'm like, oh, mortified. Yeah. But these are real things that healthcare providers have to be aware of. And as an African American healthcare provider, I really feel that I have to hold myself to a higher standard. I feel that way anyway. You know, my mom always said, and many people of color have heard their mama say, you know, you always got to be better. You can't be the same. You have got to be better. Because no matter what you do, somebody's going to be saying that you are less than. So that is how I've always tried to approach medicine. I have to do the absolute best. There is no mediocrity. I can't do that. First of all, because not only do I have other people outside in my profession saying, you know, I don't know why you think you all of that, but our own can be even worse. They can be even worse. They're like, you know, had I gone to that white doctor, this wouldn't have happened. I'm like, am I actually hearing this?
Just a human being trying to do the best that I can.
Right, exactly. But I mean, you know, as I've grown older, I have come to terms with, because, you know, I really hold myself to a hard standard, and I can be really hard on myself when things don't go the way I think they should go. I mean, the first time a patient left my practice, here I am, I'm like, oh my God, what horrible thing did I do? Now, if it happens, you know, I would tell my patients up front, I'm like, it's all about communication. If something is not right, then tell me. I can't read your mind. I did not descend from the heavens, okay? If there's a problem, then tell me. Then maybe I can correct it. So if someone leaves and they didn't talk to me, I'm like, okay, well, there ain't nothing I can do. If they did talk to me and I realize there's a problem that we really couldn't resolve, then I say, okay, it's in your best medical interest that you do see somebody else. I mean, you know, I'm
you're comfortable with.
Right. I'm just not for everybody. And that took a long time for me to actually evolve and deal with, because, you know, my whole thing is I have to be perfect. I have to do this right. And I have to make sure that anyone that comes to see me, particularly my African American patients, feel and get the best possible care. It took a moment for me to realize, you know what, Theo Hodge, everybody ain't gonna like you, and you're just not for everybody.
Hey people, this is part 1 of our convo with Dr. Hodge. If you want to check out part 2, you can go to the His Health podcast feed and find it there. Thanks for listening.